And an analogous way, like in the sense of Plato's analogies, the metaphysical is mirrored by the physical, and we have positive and negative duality here. I also think that it's fallacious to believe that the middle path is somehow the most moral way to go about either case. But you find a bunch of esoteric people who are like hermeticists, right? Hermeticists are like, you got to go up the middle pillar, man, between justice and wisdom, or between beauty and strength.
I think that's a tactic to weak us, man. So we're more subservient slaves.
So I'm going to say this once. I know we're live streaming, but I left Freemasonry as an ex-high grade Mason with a lot of orders and titles. I studied all that crap for years. Astrology, tarot, Kabbalah. Oh, yeah.
So I was just expecting Matrix to come in with the sound effects, so I just thought I'd do it for him. But...
Yeah, record scratch. I left that, and I actually spent a considerable amount of time helping others leave it and get out of the cult. I've shared a lot of these details with some of the folks in the panel, like Radwin here, Dr. Air Pressure. He knows.
I thought the silence there was more appropriate, T-Dub. Let it sit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I got wrapped up in that, thinking I was being a good Christian.
I mean, like, I got doubt about all that, like them being, you get high up and they start cutting chickens' heads off and they want to sacrifice, all that stuff, right? Like,
no, it's very genteel.
Like, yeah, they actually do a lot of good around communities. I mean, like, they got the Benevolent Society, right?
Yeah. Listen, all that stuff happens in unaffiliated side orders that high-grade Masons join that aren't officially affiliated with Masonry. That's where you find people joining like these crazy sex cults. I've heard it described this way, that Masonry is kind of like Hogwarts. It's true. You get in after the first 3 degrees, and a whole bunch of doors open up to different side orders, appendant bodies, affiliated organizations. But also what opens up are people that belong to non-affiliated, non-appendant bodies who are into the weird stuff, the criminal stuff, the degenerate stuff. But that kind of stuff is actually pretty prevalent, unfortunately. So there's an interesting convent back in like the mid to late 1700s called the Convent of Wilhelmsbad. The reason this is important is it's when the atheistic humanist Masons from France went head to head with the Christian Masons from America and Great Britain and Germany, and they basically had a debate like how's the future of Masonry going to be. And the Convent of Wilhelmsbad actually upheld that, like, basically normalized Freemasonry would be fundamentally Christian. And so all those satanic humanist atheists who formed the Bavarian Illuminati and others were kind of ousted. Unfortunately, a lot of them became American founders. Yeah, so there you go.
I mean, my grandfather, like, high-standing community member in his hometown, was invited to a meeting, right? Because they were offering him to join, right? And he declined, gracefully declined, but on the grounds that he was expected to bend the knee to a creator. He didn't want to. Yeah. He didn't want to do that. So yeah, he was considered himself an atheist. Though in his later life, on his deathbed, he was questioning. But yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
mainline masonry, I don't think is fundamentally evil or bad, although it is a big deception itself and misleads people. You know, they do bring people to the creator. They bring people to that, but they don't bring people to a specific set of theology. They kind of seem to be more interested in, you know, and this is based off of all the degree work I went through. The point is to open you up to the idea of what's called perennialism. The idea that there is an ancient one world religion from which all modern religions have broken off from and have pieces of. And masonry can help guide the individual upstream to that path that's pure to the source. Right. So they're the keepers of the Babylonian mysteries and the Egyptian mysteries and the Eastern mysteries too. They've got it all.
Hey, Sporadic, look at what I put in text.
Oh, is that in Washington?
Omaha.
Oh, Omaha, yeah. Oh, yeah, Scottish Rite. So this is interesting, guys. The Scottish Rite actually has its origins in Roman Catholicism. And this blows people's minds. Most Masons don't know this because Masonry is seen by mainline Roman Catholics as a counterweight to the Vatican, and is seen by Protestants as a way to turn the thumbscrews into Roman Catholicism. But a lot of them don't know that the Scottish Rite had its origins in Roman Catholicism. And let me explain. I have to turn off the timer. Hold on. So the Scottish Rite came out of a man named Martine di Pasquale. He founded an order called the Ilu Cohen in France during the Jacobite Rebellion. This order was run under the auspices of the Stuart kings. If you know your history, the Stuart kings are ousted from England because they were loyal to the Pope in Italy. The Stuart kings fled to France, got hooked into Masonry, and the two of them basically founded all these orders and started initiating kings and queens, princes and knights all throughout Europe to bring them under one organization to resolve differences and try and bring in world peace. So they did this, like Martine de Pasquale and his associate Louis Claude de Saint Martin were devout Roman Catholics. Martine de Pasquale had a patent issued to him by the Stuart kings to found lodges. And Martine de Pasquale, a devout Roman Catholic, had a Jesuit priest as a secretary. And he operated with a letter from the Pope to give him permission to found Masonic lodges. This all happened before the Scottish Rite. The Scottish Rite developed out of the system that Martine de Pasquale and Louis Claude de Saint Martin proffered throughout most of Europe, which was called Martinism. It was a combination of the Ilu Cohen mysteries, like I mentioned earlier, something called the Way of the Heart, which is kind of a theosophical thing that Louis Claude de Saint Martin founded, and something called CBCS, which is an old order that goes back to the Knights Templar. So they basically brought these three together with the auspices of the Pope and with the auspices of the pretender clown kings of England, and started initiating royalty throughout Europe, and this included American founders. And it made its way actually to the Caribbean before going up to South Carolina, where the Scottish Rite was founded directly out of this strain of Martinism. They call it Martinism because you had Martine de Pasquale and Louis Claude de Saint Martin, the two of them riding together throughout Europe, initiating people like a couple Martins. And so, yeah, the whole Scottish Rite system came out of that. And this is considered high-grade masonry. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. So Martinism is the meeting point of Freemasonry in the Vatican. And both Protestants and Roman Catholics don't know that they're together and conjoined at the top. You know, at least the Protestants that think Freemasonry is a counterweight to Roman Catholicism. I could go on for hours about this. I know it's off topic, though.
That's an interesting part about you that I didn't know. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got credentials to show. Like I've presented it in private chats.
Well, there you go. There's a consideration, right? Instead of it being speculation, Sunday can be off topic.
Yeah, I like it.
Off topic Tuesday, Wench Wednesday. Oh, we could fill them all.
Freaky Friday. That's what I've been going for. It's where you bring in like the anti-flat Earth conspiracy theorist, talk all about why their conspiracy theory is being harmed by flat Earth.
So why did Protestants join Freemasonry? It has to do with the CBCS, actually, the Knights Templar, right? The Templar Knights were disavowed by the Pope. And their order, which is founded in like the 1300s, was actually an outgrowth of a Byzantine Rite order that was founded prior to that. And we all know what the Templar Knights did, and the head, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake and everything. So the Templar Knights have this love-hate relationship with the Vatican. They were kind of re-kickstarted by the progenitors of Martine de Pasquale and Louis Claude de Saint Martin. So there's no real like direct link, but what's interesting is Martine de Pasquale, the founder of the Scottish Rite, the Roman Catholic, who was gallivanting around Europe with his buddy Louis and the Stuart kings. Martine de Pasquale's parents were part of the Spanish Inquisition. His parents had uncovered all kinds of saucy documents during their days in the Inquisition that were not very enlightening, not very flattering for Roman Catholics at the time. I mean, they uncovered all kinds of corruption, perfidious priests, and so on and so forth. They also uncovered a bunch of occult texts that the Catholic Church had hidden. And so he was kind of the keeper of that, because his dad was like one of the Grand Inquisitors. He was the keeper of all these texts and brought them into what became modern Freemasonry. And some of these texts were an outgrowth of Templar Knights who had recovered a lot of these things and kept them squirreled away. So that's kind of how the connection started. So Protestants glommed onto this, right? Because
No, don't stop. I was listening to that.
What happened?
Yeah.
right? Why would he do that? Well, I don't think the Pope really knew who Martine de Pasquale was, because the agreement to found Masonic lodges was given to the Stuart kings.
You cut out there, man.
Sorry, did I cut out?
20 seconds.
Yeah, we lost about 30 seconds.
Oh no. Okay. So why did the Pope give a papal? I forgot what it was called. Basically, a letter. Martine de Pasquale has a letter, and I've seen it myself, that gives him the right to found Masonic lodges everywhere. And I think it's because he didn't give it directly to him. He gave it to the Stuart kings as part of the Jacobite rebellion. That's a big deal, right? He said, use these lodges in order to basically create an army. Like he basically wanted the Stuart kings to be rebels in Europe and form loyalists to the Pope, that would form a counterweight to the rebellion happening in England, the Protestant Reformation happening in England. And they would use lodges as a secret network to organize their military efforts. So the Stuart kings gave that to actually Martine de Pasquale's dad, who gave it to Martine de Pasquale. That's how it started. I don't think the Roman Catholic Church had any idea that Freemasonry would become what it is today and seen as the counterweight to Roman Catholicism, which it originally wasn't. I had a broader point to go back to, but I was cut out for 30 seconds and I'm now drawing a blank.
You were talking about the Masonic influence on culture and society.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Masonry obviously grew in America because the founders were Masons, and a lot of them were founded actually with York Rite Masonry, and then, well, I mean, what became York Rite Masonry. They didn't have that. That came later. Some of them glommed onto the Scottish Rite, which is the Roman Catholic version of Freemasonry. So in the 32nd degree of the Scottish Rite, I'm going to blow it open for you. You watch a play about a guy named Constance, who's basically forced into a situation where this knight has to sacrifice his life to save the king and the empire. And his call out at the end is, "My hope is in God, my hope is in God, my hope is in God." And it's supposed to give the viewer motivation to put their hope into God. And the Latin phrase for this is like spes mea in Deo est, which is on the crest of the 32nd degree symbol. I might have to go. Hang on. So the whole thing is filled with like Templarism and, evokes images from the Roman Empire. And that final degree, I think, is supposed to lead people into wanting to know more. Like once you get to this 32nd degree of the Scottish Rite, where do you go from there? And the Mason is led to look into what's called CBCS, which is a French acronym. But in English, it basically means the Knights Beneficent of the Holy City. CBCS was created by a guy named Jean-Jacques Villamose, and he was a student under Martine de Pasquale, and he was a devout Roman Catholic back in the day. And he was part of that convent at Willemsbad, where they met with the Satanic Freemasons, the Illuminati, and defeated them in a series of policy debates, and forever tried to cement modern Masonry as a fundamentally Christian idea. And the Satanic Illuminists became deists and French related, and a lot of American founders are part of that branch. So that's kind of how it all ties in. Sorry, I got distracted for a minute. Again, lost my train of thought. The reason why it kind of wove itself into American society is because America is fundamentally a Masonic project. Our founders were Masons. A lot of our early, industrialists were Masons and were members of offshoot organizations. We were founded as a Masonic project because Masonry at the time was all about the individual being greater than God, and God being somewhat deistic if he existed at all. I mean, you can see this attitude reflected in everything. And what they'd point to today is the results of the effort. America being the greatest, most prosperous nation has to be a consequence of the idea that man is basically God, if not better. These are ideas I fundamentally reject today. I used to not see this when I was involved in this stuff. Not like that. Like I said, when I first joined this, I thought I was being a good Christian and a member of my community. I mean, I got family members that were involved in this stuff too. The things I'm sharing with you are things that probably 90% of Masons themselves don't know.
Maybe they do know, they just don't want to make it out to be like the way you say it right now, because you're not
I don't
involved?
think they do, bro. I don't think they do. I mean, I've been around the block masonry wise. I've got I've got street creds. I can share them with you privately. I've seen a lot of this. This stuff is really kind of at the top. Most Masons don't care to dig into the history. They don't care about this stuff. They don't care about even the esoteric concepts, and they don't care about the occultism. Like they kind of look at Freemasonry as what you do like after church. And a lot of Baptist pastors are members of the lodge, if not the worshipful master of a lodge.
Yeah. They like the titles and the power. That has a lot to do with why some of them are just pretty much big dummies. They don't really care about any of the other things. They only care about the benefits that comes with being a part of a club like this.
The titles. Oh gosh, man. Here's another thing. Most Masons you'll meet are probably 32nd degree Scottish Rite Masons at a minimum. So the idea that you could be a 32nd degree to outsiders seems like an amazing achievement or accomplishment. But you can go to a seminar program and get 32 degrees delivered to you in a weekend during an encampment. I'm totally serious. Now, this doesn't mean the participant, the Mason, actually understood everything that was given to him, right? He's basically strapped to a chair like Clockwork Orange, has all this stuff flashed at him, and he'll spend the next several years, if not decades of his life, as long as he's in a lodge and has people to guide him, trying to unpack everything that was shown to him. In the meantime, he can hold himself out as a 32nd degree Mason who, in reality, doesn't know jack about anything that he looked at, anything that he witnessed.
Sporadic, what do you think the end game for somebody that joins one of those? Like, what was your goal? What was the goal of anybody that joins this? Just to be a good Christian? Doesn't sound like it.
A lot of them are. A lot of them, I mean, they're like, my boss is a member, my friends are a member, my families are members. These people do good work in the community. Majority are Christians. Why not? You go in, you see biblical themes.
Yeah, what I've known about humans, though, is that people are greedy, right? They want something that's going to give a benefit to them for anything that they do. So I don't know, man. I'm still like, there's this idea that people are mostly good, but then, the idea that people want what, gives them satisfaction is the fact that they're going to be involved in a group that's going to give them some benefit in life. So like this group, some ways, if this group in some way says, okay, well, you're trying to work hard for that promotion. You know how you're trying to get to that, climb the ladder of success. We'll make it easy for you. This road is going to be paved in nothing but gold. Get to where you want to. You want to be a judge? Well, just put in a good word. You shake a few hands, and Bob's your uncle. So I think to them, it's more of a way to get to the top and hold power. Because these guys are all holding like seats of power, are they not? Am I getting that wrong?
Totally. Judges, magistrates. Listen, officially, the organization looks upon that kind of behavior you described as corrupting Freemasonry, but they all freaking do it.
Yep.
So let me tell you my story. I'm going to close the door here. My kids don't need to hear this. All right. And I probably don't have a lot of time, but we'll see. So, in 2019, I suffered a catastrophe. I won't get into the details. I had burns covering 60% of my body. The fact that I'm not disfigured at all any way that you can see is a miracle. So I got to wear like long sleeve shirts and pants, even though my face was consumed too. So I had a near-death experience. I was a high-grade Mason and proud of myself. Oh, crap. This is probably too deep.
Move it to a private call?
No, it's okay. It's okay. So it's a testimony. While I was having a near-death experience, I encountered the guardian of the threshold. There was I was in this world, okay? So imagine this. I did die, guys, like on the table twice. during that experience, I looked at my body and it was disfigured. It was like a half animal, half human, and I was in a cave system that was craggy and rocky and tore you up every time you had to walk anywhere. And it was desolate and I was alone. I felt like I was down there for years, combing the walls, looking for a way out, giving up. I had cycles of going to sleep out of exhaustion and waking up again. The passage of time was real. At some point during this experience, I encountered this guardian of the threshold. Okay, I call it that. You can Google that term. This smoke demon came to me in a large cave, in a large expanse that I discovered, and offered me a contract. Right? The contract is he said, I will release you from this prison if you take my name and recognize my name and know my name. And he issued me a contract. During this time, like, I don't know why I didn't call out to Jesus Christ as a Christian. I don't know why. Like, I mean, normally in a crazy spiritual situation like this, Christians' first inclination is to call out the name of the Lord, Jesus, and these demons go away. I was unable to do that. I didn't even think to do that, even though I was going to church every Sunday, right? I was a good Christian and a Mason. And I didn't think to do that in this state. I thought I could outsmart this thing, right? So it thrust me the contract, and I'm like, this is no good because I don't trust this evil thing. And I said, you know what? I will recognize your name, but your name is only as good as it is down here. Your name means absolutely nothing above. Yeah, I like in a subconscious way, I thought I was in hell. And so I signed the contract, gave it the finger, and just then the ceiling broke open and a big arm reached down and grabbed me and lifted me up. And I was suddenly surrounded by angels. They debriefed me on the situation and basically told me I had to reprioritize my life and understand who I was and what Jesus means to me. So, after about a year of consternation, I left Masonry. And then I found Flat Earth.
That's an interesting testimony right there. But that the place that you described is described in Enoch, by the way. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah, I do. I know. Yep, I know now. I didn't know then. Yep.
There's a location to that place, actually. I mean, there's a cave system that they describe as in that very specific way.
It's not quite hell, right? It's pretty close to it.
It's a holding place.
I was there.
What you were going for is a place where souls go when they await judgment. And so until then, that's according to Enoch anyway. I'm just relaying back what my understanding in the research of Enoch, what it describes is a holding place. So the place is the souls of men who aren't in the state of, having been following after the one who's been teaching everyone like what life is, which is Yeshua, Jesus. So when you land there, you're kind of disoriented. And that's kind of like the feeling that you had, disorientation, like you didn't know where you were. You didn't know like if up was down, and then you're trying to feel your way around. And so why didn't you call out to Yeshua after being in church this whole time? It's I guess
I didn't have a genuine relationship with him. That's why.
Yeah.
I did not have an exclusive relationship with Jesus because I was taught this perennialism.
Right.
Yep. That's fundamentally what it is. And, that's yeah, I mean, I could describe this place for you in detail. I have not forgotten it one bit. And
what have you changed in your lifestyle that makes you now follow Jesus' lifestyle?
I mean, so yeah, I can tell you, as far as like the change I went through, besides rejecting Freemasonry and more, I actually gave my besides giving my life over and surrendered to Jesus fully. I'm now a member of the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is not Roman Catholicism at all. They're victims of Roman oppression and have been for 500 years before the Protestants.
Aren't they still following after some form of, isn't that like a derivative of Catholicism, though?
No, not at all.
Don't
the
they
true
have
history
statues
of the world is that the Roman bishop was one of 5 in the pentarchy of the original church who broke away and became heretics and apostate. The other 4 bishops remained and remain to this day. Now, they're not as influential or as big as Rome at all, because Rome has been attacking them since about the 800s, since Charlemagne took power and usurped authority from the true Christian Roman emperor in Constantinople, not Rome. And they set up this whole parallel Christianity based off of Frankish paganism infused with Christianity, and proffered that as true, unbroken Christianity going back to Christ, which is the false church, the whore of Babylon. The Protestant reformers, the Protestant reformers tried to form a bridge to the Eastern Church during the Protestant Reformation, but you know why they couldn't? Because the Eastern Church was too busy fleeing from Islamic aggression.
Yeah. So what makes them unique in the Christian umbrella?
They've got the fullness of what Protestantism tries to be, plus the unbroken line to the church is founded by the actual apostles.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to the guy in chat. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, but not to you, Sporadic. But that's what I was talking about. There's a lot more that you can get from other books, but definitely. It is talking about Abraham's bosom, but then Enoch describes 3 places that the souls of men go to. One of them is vacant right now. Used to be Abraham's bosom, but that's no longer the place. Ever since Yeshua rose from the dead, so that's was Abraham's bosom, but it's not. That's not that anymore. It's a bit detailed. Anyway, I don't want to get into much into that, but yeah. I was just interested because
the Eastern Church more embraces Enoch and Jubilees than the Roman Church or the mainstream Protestants. Like, I first heard about the Book of Enoch through my priest before I was a flat earther. Yeah, because the Book of Enoch was preserved by the Ethiopians who were part of the Orthodox body. Not the Roman Church, not Protestants. The Ethiopians are kind of like on the side, but still are part of the whole Eastern Orthodox tradition.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are guarding the Ark of the Covenant today, if you didn't know that.
Right.
That ain't the fucking Ark of the Covenant. It is in the Bible, bro. What are you on about?
This is a huge red pill, dude. Like, listen, I grew up Lutheran, right? I'm like as mainstream Protestant as it gets. Martin Luther and all that. I speak German. I lived in Germany. I was a seminary student under the Lutheran Church at one point. And today I'm an Eastern Orthodox. Luther used to write letters to bishops of the churches in the East and didn't get much love because, like I said, they were trying to survive. They've been under Islamic oppression and Roman Catholic oppression ever since about 1054 AD, the Great Schism. And that's when the Roman Church in the West started falsifying history.
Let me ask a question to the room, I guess, now that you're talking a little bit about religion, and I just want to sidetrack to this, like, what draws people to Flat Earth? like at least for the people that keep coming back every day, like me, you, and maybe most of the people in here that've been quite some time. What draws us every day to come back in here? What is the motivation? I can tell you what it is for me. I don't know. I just want to open it up to you guys. Because you'd have those who would be the guys who come in here to say that the Earth is a globe based on explanations and affirmation that men is the ones who can find what truth is and discover our reality, what it is. So when that's not the case, when we can say nothing in reality matches that, what draws us back? Like each and every day. Some people might say fun and whatever. There's no real wrong answer to this. I'm just saying there's just like, I guess everybody has their motivation to actually keep going forward, right?
It depends on what mood I'm in. Some days I'm just here for the meltdowns. Just sit back and wait for one of them to break, and then laugh my ass off. Other days I'm just here as a gate guardian, waiting for people to do dumb shit just so I can nuke them and kick them out. It just depends on what mood I'm in at the time. So, yeah.
All right, fair point. Anybody else? Like, what are you here for? That's the question I want to ask for anybody here.
I'm here for 3 things. Number 1, document the downfall of Western society. Number 2, spend some time doing some things I enjoy with some people I can tolerate.
These calculations and inferences or extrapolations from people who would say that it decreases all the way into the vacuum, depending on wherever the altitude is, but it decreases all the way up to a near perfect vacuum. So that's what they're saying, right? So they're talking about a gradient, but I want evidence of that. Now, is that unreasonable for me to ask that I want to know what would back up the claim that the space is a vacuum by way of measurement?
No, I'd say that's fair, but at the same time, we do have ways of testing certain circumstances without actually being there. Like, we can figure out what the pressure at the very bottom area on a trench would be without like actually sending like a probe down there to figure it out. And it would be the same way, but in a sense reverse of figuring out what the pressure would be in space, or like perfect vacuum, which would be space, without like actually going there. But yeah, it totally makes sense to ask for like an actual experiment of something like going out there.
Okay. So what we're doing, or at least what I'm doing now, is showing that there isn't any actual measurement of air pressure, or I would say this, or temperature, to be verified in localized regions like they would claim that they're in. So there's a lot of ideas of what they think it could be based on a gradient of pressure, but there's no real way that they've measured in those regions. So I would say that space being a vacuum still hasn't been measured. So there's no way that somebody can verify to say that space is a vacuum. Therefore, there's a conversation that happens after this one, whether or not that high vast pressure differential that exists would be that what they claim it is in low Earth orbit, because it hasn't been measured. So when my whole beef is, I want to know why we haven't had these pressure measurements if we have all this technology and advancements that we can't put something up there that could do that.
See, I agree with you there. I haven't like researched anything about this topic. But if there haven't been any experiments, like I'm going to assume you're like completely truthful here. And there haven't been any experiments. I'd also wonder why there hasn't been just like literally anything about it. Because that'd be strange, because it does not seem that hard of a test to do.
Yeah, right.
And I wouldn't say that I've changed my opinion on the fact that it's immeasurable. I would say it is measurable, unless there's some like contradicting force, but I haven't seen any evidence towards that. But I would just say that my argument hasn't been like convincing. Like I wouldn't have convinced myself there either for like my standpoint, because you're right. I didn't.
Well, yeah, it's an idea of something that you can measure like on the surface and maybe probably higher up in altitude, but not to the level where they're at. So you can be convinced of a specific way they can indirectly do it, but you can't be convinced in a way that they directly measured it. Like, and that's the problem. So you still need to fill in the gap whether or not it can be measured versus you having an idea that they measured it indirectly. So what I'm asking for is a direct measurement that hasn't been proven. So it's like basically saying, I guess by looking at your feet, you're about a size 10, but I don't really know the size of your feet until I measure them. So I need to know, and people need to know, if it's true.
Mm-hmm. What would make you say that it's like immeasurable? Like why is it not measurable but just hasn't been?
Well, look at the documentations in the PDF where it shows that they only got these extrapolations based on this pressure gradient that they have, but they have never gone into the localized regions where they say they would consider getting into like a super low vacuum, like the mesosphere and the thermosphere, and also the temperature measurements from those regions to be what they claim that it is. So we have inconsistencies with the idea that we could measure something down here where we're at and create a artificial vacuum, and then do things where we can measure with certain devices this artificial vacuum. But yet when it comes to a natural vacuum, where it's said to be, we have the inability to actually directly measure this with any sort of device that could do it localized. So there's a kind of a reasonable kind of request for them to actually have this completed. So it hasn't been done ever since, I want to say, what is it, the 70s, where they've only have these extrapolations. And they've been working off of this information for quite some time now.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so would you be able to like paint me a picture of what you see, like all of the layers of the atmosphere, and then like beyond, like what, like from your perspective, what does that look like? Just so I can kind of visualize, because I have a bit of a counterpoint I want to make, but I feel like it wouldn't work with a lot of models of the Earth.
Well, I mean, according to what we understand about pressure, is that according to the definition of gas pressure, it would need a container to require to cause that pressure. Otherwise, gas uncontained would continuously move out to fill the available space. Now, this is obvious because you can test this and find out for sure that that's the case. It's not really something that should be argued over. Like, it's just obvious. We all understand this simple concept, right? I mean, are you coming from that perspective?
Yeah, totally.
So if that's the case, then if we have gas pressure in the first instance, how is it possible to have this gas pressure without any containment? So the problem we're having, though, is that space being a vacuum is said to be something where it's a near perfect vacuum in the regions where they say that they are, but there's no measurement of that. So how can we or anybody else accept that the paradigm is such when we understand that gas pressure requires containment? And therefore, they're not measuring gas pressure in the regions where it needs to be considered that vacuum. So we have a problem. We have the ability to understand what gas pressure is, as it's clearly defined. So we don't have the ability to measure it, to make it what they think that it is, expanding out to, the further cosmos to make it the paradigm of an ever expanding gradient, like outward, without containment. So that's the problem. We need to have containment. So whatever system that we're in, it being dynamic, we don't have the idea that it's an ever-expanding vacuum with that fizzles out to us a thinner gradient. That doesn't work because of the fact that we have gas pressure on the surface. We're breathing it right now. So if that's true, then it would require containment. That's the problem. So if we don't have a space vacuum, then we don't have to talk about containment because we already know that you can't have gas pressure without containment. So, or if we think about cosmology, what if people don't know that it's not just a container that could cause that, but also perhaps a different model, a different idea altogether. Doesn't have to be a container. It could be something that contains, but without, you know what I mean? Like the mystery of the sky is such that we can't have the explanation unless we have a way to verify what we're talking about. You get what I'm saying?
I totally get what you're saying. I want to argue.
We're only working with things here on Earth, and I think that's where the issue lies. We're trying to verify the thing that's a mystery with things that we can work with.
Yeah. I want to argue gravity, but again, I don't know the exact specifics, so it's really hard to back it up, especially since gravity is like very specific numbers. But if, let's say, everything proclaimed about gravity was true, right? It's this force where more mass equals more gravity. So, the Earth having a lot of mass would pull, it would pull stuff towards the center of the Earth. Now, if, let's say, that did happen, and even with, I guess, like a flat plane, like you had a flat plane and the center of gravity was in the center of that plane, would gas molecules not be pulled towards that center as well as like becoming a gradient outwards, as ones further away are less affected and the ones closer are more densely packed, meaning it would be like harder to pack closer? You know what I mean? Like if
I get what you're saying. I think that the concept behind what gravity is, it follows a cause and effect relationship. So if you're identifying that when we're speaking of it, we have the effect that we all see and we can quantify. We can deal with things with object and medium relationship. But then there's the cause that gives it the property or the law that it does or it follows, right? So, it has a specific vector, gravity, right? Or at least it would be considered to have a specific vector. So the idea behind it would be that you'd have to give an explanation for the effect that we see based on what we could think about a cause being, right? So that's why you have these gravitational theories and concepts that have been given before. But the problem you're having is gravity itself is just like what we would see as far as like being able to describe, and it being having an effect on gas in any way would have to be demonstrated. So let's say you have gas expansion, right? So you could use this any method, right? You have gas expansion within like a test that you have, on the surface. You say, okay, I'm going to show how we're going to show gas expanding to fill an available volume, and we want to know the effects of gravitational, influence. So the gravitational influence on that gas, we're going to notice if we have a test where we have gas expansion. So you do a test and you check to see if gravity, in the way that you think about it, affects gas in a as far as influencing it to do something. Now, in your kind of estimation, do you believe that gravity would affect gas expansion in any way?
No, there are certain circumstances which I don't think it would. Like if, let's say you had like a vacuum and you put some, I don't know, like helium inside of it, right? I guess helium is a bad one because that naturally floats.
That's a bad one.
Any gas, like I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible. But,
I know.
Sorry. I guess like argon doesn't float. But if you had like a vacuum and you put argon in there, that would still sink because it's still under the influence of gravity, but it will spread out in the way
it's
that
not sinking. So you just contradicted yourself. You said it'd be sinking, but it still spreads out. So
yeah, so it would be more of a gradient.
Yeah, I know, but you're talking about a gradient happening in a vacuum chamber. You think that when you put that gas into that vacuum chamber, that the gas itself would go to the bottom?
Not entirely. There would be, you could measure that the majority of it would be at the bottom, and as you go higher up...
Really? Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Have you seen that test being performed?
I haven't physically seen it, but it's how it works.
See, I think that's interesting. That's interesting that you've actually put forward an idea, right? That this could be the case. But I think what would trump that would be that you would test it and find out whether or not that would be true. And so if you do that, what we understand with gases is they dissipate, they fill available spaces. So the thing that would happen when you insert that gas in that vacuum chamber is that it would fill that available space immediately.
So assuming that the, like, I don't know, prerequisite of gravity existing and all of its factors, like, actually existing, what would separate the fact that it affects, like, physical solids like rock and like grass differently than gas would? Because gas, it moves throughout, right? It'll fill the space, but solids don't. But they're both still affected by gravity, is what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, I know what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the object and the medium relationship. What does gas do in the medium that it's in? Well, in and of itself is a medium, so it becomes the thing that you're putting things into. So we're breathing the gas, right? That's the medium. Yeah. So it can't be the thing in the medium and the medium itself. That's a paradox. It needs to be one or the other. So if you have something in the medium, like grass or a rock, that's what's in the gas. So I think the problem here is trying to define gas in a way that you're substantiating it being a particular thing, right? So that we're going to identify different types of gases, but they have a different effect when they mix, right? So they mix or they don't mix. That's what you're saying with gases. But either way, kinetic molecular theory describes that gases have elastic collisions. They have perfect elastic collisions, if I'm going to say just like it says in the theory, and that they don't have any attraction nor repulsion. So there's no way that gases in that theory show that gravity is of any consequence to the gas. So kinetic molecular theory actually goes along with what we identify gas behavior being. And that's the most important part, gas behavior, right? You want to understand it to a level where it either is or is not being influenced by gravity. So the important takeaway here, and from the conversation whether or not gases are being contained on the Earth as a globe, is gravity being an influence on gases? And the absolute resounding answer is no, it isn't. Because if that was the case why gases are being held down, then we would have a prime example on the surface, because that's where gravity would be the strongest, and it would be the weakest at the outer boundaries. So we should have an example of gas attraction to the Earth via an example or a demonstration of that being the case. But we don't. We still see gas expansion. So that's the problem that people have with the idea behind gravity being the cause for the reason why gases do not expand into the vacuum of space.
For the example, could you not just use the atmosphere itself as the oxygen we breathe is gas, and it's more dense near the surface of the Earth, and it thins out as it goes higher up?
Well, yeah, but the obvious answer to that is because it's being, produced on the surface. So that's the reason why oceans are producing a lot of the breathable air that you have. So it's not being produced up in the air anywhere, up in the sky. So that's the reason why we're breathing the gas.
Well, if the gas would spread out, why would it stay near the surface instead of evenly distributing out? Like if you had a faucet.
Because it's all created at the surface. He just said that. How is it instantly going to go everywhere at the same time?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we're only talking about just common sense, right, when it comes to this? Because gas behavior is understood by it's well understood. We don't have, there's a lot of places, and what we talk about is we shouldn't question these things because we can tangibly work with them. So that's the other thing. You can want there to be a paradigm where gravity's causing an influence on gases, but you wanting that and it being the case are two different things. You can't have, in other words, you can't have your cake and eat it. You gotta prove it. Yeah. So that's what this evidence. We do it, like I said in the earlier statement, was we're doing this all like an evidentiary hearing. So if there was a case for gravity causing an influence on gases, where's the evidence of that?
I do have two things. So for gravity it's based on like the relation of how much mass there is, and gravity affecting gas would be significantly less than it affecting solid, as solids are significantly more dense, and that's why gas are able to spread out, because it's very few particles over space, and they're able to spread out. Which would mean you need a lot more gas for it to weigh more, which is why like you can hold way more gas in the same amount of volume that you can like a stone pillar, because there's like
I'm gonna
way more gas in between them.
Cowboy, I hate to interrupt, but I'm gonna go ahead and hand this off to someone else because I'm gonna get into some dead zones for my reception. So I'm actually just gonna hand it off.
Yeah, it was a great talk. Have a good day.
Yeah. Thanks for the
Alpha. And we got Radwin. Radwin, you wanna hang out? You like talking about vacuums?
I'm not sure how long I have. You want to know about them? You want to know about vacuum chambers? I know in a vacuum chamber you can't have water or gas balls. So what do you think of that?
I agree.
So outer space, no gas balls and no water balls in outer space.
I guess it depends. So the entire point of where the balls would come from would be if they're affected by gravity or not. But let's say, okay, I guess you don't even need gravity in this situation.
Gas balls can't form in a vacuum because of gravity. It doesn't work like that. Where does it start?
It would. What do you mean? Where does it start? Like the center of it?
How do you start forming gas balls in a vacuum?
So for
Jupiter, gas ball. Remember, the sun is a gas ball. How do they form gravity in a vacuum?
So every atom has a little bit of mass, no matter how small, including gases and solids.
Gases repel each other. They're not attracted to each other, so that can't happen.
That little amount of mass they have causes a tiny, like micro fractionable amount of gravity. And when you have a ton of gas or a ton of solid, it forms together to create.
Are you saying that, or you can demonstrate that?
So then you go ahead and take over since you're in the middle of the night.
No, you continue. Yeah, no, Sasha's not taking over.
But as you have
okay, so you have a gas molecule flying away from another one. There's only two in existence, and they're not attracted to each other. How do they become attracted to each other when they're flying away from each other?
They won't. There's not enough mass there. You need enough mass for it to become a strong enough gravitational force for them to pull each other together. That's why you see planets of specific sizes. Otherwise, they wouldn't be held together.
Yeah, so since we know, well, you're just making assumptions. Since we know gases go in all directions, how do you make that happen?
I just said how it's if the amount of mass you need enough. That's why asteroids.
In the middle of my room, I popped the balloon. Poof! All the air in it just went out into the room. How do I make them go back into a balloon shape and just sit there in a balloon shape without the balloon? And make gravity.
I'm not sure how I'm supposed to reword this.
What?
I'm not sure how I'm supposed to reword this. You need enough of it, like a lot. That's why asteroids don't have their own gravitational field, or they do, but it's incredibly small.
We're going to skip asteroids since space is fake, and you haven't been able to prove space is real, and gravity is not real because I can take a cup of water that's sitting on my table, right? Mm-hmm. And it's being held in the cup by gravity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I put that cup of water in my vacuum chamber, which I own, is downstairs in my lab, I put a cup of water in there and turn on the vacuum chamber and suck all the air out of it, like the vacuum of space. There's no air in there, so I'll simulate that. And the water turns into gas and leaves the vacuum chamber. So because it does it for me, it does it for everybody else, including outer space that doesn't exist.
Oh, that's like the, okay. I was assuming you had the same standpoint that the other guy had, and he was saying that you could not run like a localized test to see like if a vacuum had, if you ran. Okay. So what would your standpoint be? I just want to know, just so I'm not like using his presumptions and implying like my answers to you.
Well, gravity didn't hold water down in the cup, did it? It was air pressure.
Wait, you're saying air pressure was holding it down?
Yeah, as soon as I removed the air pressure, the water floated away. So that wasn't gravity, unless you think a vacuum chamber can create anti-gravity.
Do you think if you had like this massive, like 100-mile long sheet, right, and you had, let's say, space was just full of air, right, and this massive sheet was moving insanely fast, do you think that would like hold air molecules? I guess, okay, imagine it's like a semicircle, like an empty semicircle, like a bowl, and it was flying through just a ton of air. Do you think inside that air, near the center or near like the bottom of the bowl, would be more dense than like near the outside?
That's where gases start, at the bottom on Earth.
Because what I'm trying to say is, like, you don't even need gravity to argue against that. Like, it could just be
gravity at all. Gravity is fake. You don't need it at all. Nothing you need. The only reason you need gravity is to have balls in a vacuum chamber in a universe, and you have none of those. So Earth is flat.
What is, like, for you, what is containing the air inside of the Earth? Like, what's stopping it from, I don't know, like, what's the in and out, I guess? Because I can't really visualize this right now.
Yeah, since space is fake, we don't need a magical shell or a dome over us to create the air pressure. We're already in the pressurized system.
Mm-hmm. So what happens if you just keep going up?
You won't be able to keep going up. Air will be too thin. It'll just stop.
What do you mean? Like, if you had, I guess, like a rocket, for example.
If you let a helium balloon go, it'll expand so much that it'll either pop, or if you use Mylar, it'll stop expanding and it won't rise any farther.
Okay. What if you like shot a bullet upwards, which wasn't dependent on like how much air there is? It's just the momentum, and the only thing slowing it down would be, I mean, gravity or whatever the pulling force down would be, or air resistance. Like, what if you shot a really high power?
Gravity is not pulling force.
All right, I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, see you, Radwin.
You said the gravity pulling force.
Well, I was just trying to say, like, whatever the, like, because when you shoot a bullet up, right, it comes back down, and that's because of whatever.
That's strange if you start to invoke, let's say you said gravity, and now whatever it is.
Wait, what? Sorry.
Because when you were saying it, you said that was gravity, and now it's whatever it is.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just trying to say, like, for his worldview, there's also something like keeping us on the Earth. When you jump, you come back down, and I didn't know what he was claiming, like what was causing that. So for me, I was saying gravity or whatever that is, because I'm not sure.
What is causing your jump?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What is causing your jump?
My jump is my legs and my muscles flexing, which pushes against gravity for a partial time until I get
causing
back
your
down.
jump? Who is causing your jump?
Me. I'd be jumping.
That means you are causing your jump. Are you jumping in the water or in the air?
I'd be jumping in the air.
Are you more dense than air?
Yeah, I'm more dense than air.
It will be different if you're jumping in the water and in the air. Is that correct?
I mean, partially. If you jumped underwater, it'd be harder because water is way thicker, so you wouldn't be able to get us out.
Why?
Because it's more dense. It's got more mass per molecule. It's got more because it's H2O instead of just oxygen, which is.
Do we have conclusion about that now?
Sorry, what was that?
Do we have now conclusion what is happening now?
Not exactly. I think we still have slightly different.
We have now a conclusion. Okay, let's try again. You jumping, you are more dense than air. What will happen with you? You will go up, left, or down?
And I will go up and then come back down after a little bit.
Why will come back down?
Because gravity is pulling me down. Because my molecules have more mass.
Gravity is pulling you down. What if you are more dense than air? What will happen then?
If I'm more dense than air? then I come down.
Yeah.
You want to say less dense?
No, I'm saying more dense, not less dense. He's saying I will go down if I'm more dense. That means you're more dense.
Mm-hmm.
You will go down if you're more dense. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's it?
Yes.
Why we need to say something like a word gravity now?
Because what causes density? What makes like a rock more dense than a ball of dirt? If they're the same size.
Air is less dense than a ball? I don't know.
Like helium, how it floats. Why is
helium is less dense and it's going up?
Yeah, but like why is it less dense?
Because it's less dense.
What? That's circular logic,
Doesn't have
though.
anything to do with gravity.
He's talking. No, hold on, gentlemen. He's talking about what gives elements the law that they do to be in the environment for the object and medium relationship. So different elements react differently, right? He's asking we have different elements that are, we can discover are more dense than others. Why do they react differently to the medium of air? That's what he's asking.
But he jumped in the air. Did he saw that elements doing something?
No. Hold on. Just can somebody answer that? I would do it. I have spotty connection.
Different. Oh, go ahead, Necros. Sorry.
It doesn't have anything to do with the gravities because of the molecule itself and that theory of the molecule, the atom that you will go with. Because the atom itself, density of atoms, it's not related to gravity, but the molecular forces that are creating those atoms. It's not gravity that makes the electron go around the nucleus. No, that doesn't have anything to do with gravity, but it's electric forces and nuclear forces. So the density of the objects are due to the attributes that are related to the molecule itself. So iron, and you can go to the table of matter, so you can see the molecules. That doesn't have anything to do with the gravity. Even if I give you gravity, even if I was a glober and claiming globe and gravity, it doesn't have anything to do with gravity itself. The density of the molecules, it's due to electricity and electric forces and nuclear forces.
I guess I'm just sorry. I guess I'm just confused because density can't happen without gravity or something that would cause every molecule to be pulled in a certain direction.
Yeah, that's an explanation, though. You got to think about it. It's an explanation. It's not an example of. You don't. It's kind of like a concept that you're working out in your mind. So it's given as an explanation. It's not tested.
So
even that explanation is not agreed with everyone. I can play to you. I share it with you in the side chat. Dr. Walter Lewis, and he's explaining that to his student in MIT.
Okay. Yeah, that would be nice. It's just, it also doesn't make sense because why would, like, I guess I need like a deeper explanation for me to understand a bit more.
That's fine. I think you've been holding on to this convention. Yeah, that'd be great. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were talking about air pressure before and like how, I think you brought up an example of helium. You're like, no, wait, that wouldn't work too well. Let's do something like argon, right? So intuitively, it sounds like you understand that there is a thing that's called like atomic weight or molecular weight, right? Yeah. So the weird thing about gases is being unbonded, even though they're said to have mass, and we can define that or try to later. The main issue is gas molecules follow a random walk unless actual real forces act upon them. And they also travel linearly until they either bump into a solid, like what's called a thermodynamic boundary layer, right, like a container, or they might, on occasion, bump into each other and then shoot off in another direction in a linear fashion too. So pressure is something that is measured with like a barometer. I saw Mush Kane there in text chat talking about it. You can hold the barometer upside down, sideways, right side up, and it's going to measure the same pressure. So it's not
Yeah.
like there's a preferred direction to gas molecules. It's almost as if they don't even know that there's gravity anywhere to begin with. We have examples of this in cave systems. There's a great article I have from the Journal of Geologic and Karst Studies where they examined a cave system, and this was actually within the context of, and the whole point of the document of, trying to correct a misperception that gravity acts on and stratifies gases of different molecular weights. So they pulled up examples of all these cave systems where they've taken measurements, and these are systems that like nobody's ever tapped into before, that have been isolated and sealed off from the outside world for millions of years. And inside is a nice homogeneously mixed medium of gases of different molecular weights that did not stratify based off of gravity, as some people might think predicts. So what is
Okay.
like
I
gas
can understand.
pressure? I mean, gas pressure is fundamentally the number of times a gas molecule, regardless of how massive it is, the number of times it's hitting a surface, like the barometer, like the dimple inside, to measure pressure.
Mhm.
It is not related to its weight. And this is demonstrated by gas laws that we can actually do in reality. If I were to take three different containers, let's say you've got helium, let's say you've got oxygen, and you've got radon. Three different containers. And let's say these containers are the same exact size, and let's say that they have the same exact number of molecules each, even though they all have different weights. Right? Helium is pretty lightweight, and oxygen is heavier, and radon is heavy. So let's put the same number of molecules in there and heat it up to the same temperature. What happens? They all have the same pressure on on the same on all the same walls of the container, top, sides, and bottom. This is Avogadro's law being demonstrated, and this demonstrates a concept in physics called the mass-independent nature of gas pressure. Pressure is not caused by mass. Now, so what is mass, right? If gravity is a mass interaction, I mean, we all learned this in school, right? Newton through Einstein, there's mass involved. But if pressure is mass independent, that means it is gravity independent. And while that seems to make sense, right? We don't see the stratification of different molecules of different weights according to the gravitational pull of those weights. We don't see that happening, and we don't see a downward bias of gas. We do see a temperature bias. That's probably one of the biggest factors in creating gradients and moving gas around. And absent of temperature, you can create vacuums, and gas will rush to equalize. But gravity is strangely absent as a mitigating force in the entire kinetic molecular theory of gas behavior that we know today. So what gives? I mean, gases are freaking weird. We know they have mass, whatever that is, but we can't weigh gas molecules. And gas pressure doesn't have anything to do with their mass, but the number of times the molecule hits the side of a wall or a pressure sensor of some kind. So this is really strange. We were taught at the same time in school, right, that gravity is holding mass to the Earth. Well, if that's the case, then what they're telling us is gravity is causing a compression of gas molecules. They have a tendency to want to escape into space, but gravity is holding them back at a rate that's faster than entropy, forcing them to come together, creating friction, creating heat. But it's not there. There's no evidence of this in nature. We do have a gas gradient, like nobody disputes that. You go higher up away from the surface, yeah, I mean, it gets colder up there. So
And, gas isn't made in space. So it is made at the surface where it's warmer. So you do have a temperature gradient. Oh, that's interesting. We have a temperature gradient. Could that be part of it? Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. There could be other reasons too. But we know that gravity's not acting on it because of the mass-independent nature of pressure. 14.7 psi at the surface is not a consequence of gravity.
Okay, so is like a summary, would you be able to say like what exactly like that would be a consequence of? I'm getting what you're saying. I think I'm still a tiny bit lost.
Yeah, I mean, as far as what exactly is happening, nobody knows the full extent of it. Hey, Radwin, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, in summary, space is fake. In summary.
Yeah, man. It means
that summarizes it all.
There's something to this world, man, that's different. We are taught contradictions about our cosmology in school, throughout school.
About everything.
Yeah, it's weird. And we're flat earthers because we happen to notice this. That's really it. We're mystified, dude.
Okay. What would you say would happen if like you were 10,000 feet in the air and you opened a container of argon and like poured it out? Like that would go down, and then your explanation for that would be because it's denser, right?
We go in all directions.
I mean, it depends. So here's another thing, like different molecules will respond to temperature variations differently. So you could take two different molecules and apply the same heat, but they won't move at the same rate at the same time.
Yeah.
Eventually they'll get going. So you could take like a denser gas in a less dense medium and watch it intermediate. You might see something. So yeah, Radwin's right. You might see some downward direction at first, but eventually it's going to homogeneously mix and equalize. So they do these tests where they'll take a heavy frozen gas like sulfa hexafluoride in an open container, and they'll pour it in, and everybody goes, ooh. And you know what they falsely say to the kids? That this is gravity. It's a heavier gas. No. It's a denser medium. It's a denser mix. And eventually, because it's unbonded, the thing will start to dissipate and equalize with the rest of the air. So if you go to like Death Valley, it's really deep below sea level, you have the same ratio of air molecules there that you do if you go up on Mount Everest. There's just less of it up in Mount Everest, but the same ratio, mass-wise. Isn't that interesting?
The same ratio, do you mean like distance per
oxygen to argon? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Like gases ratio. I thought you were saying like distance per gas. Yeah, no. That makes sense. Yeah.
It's freaking weird. Yeah, nobody really understands all of this. Like the latest, most authoritative source on the atmosphere is from like 1976 from the U.S. government.
Dang.
Like,
well, it was great
standard atmosphere.
I do have to go though. But I'm glad we could have these conversations. Again, I'm sorry I wasn't really great at backing up my points, but I don't really have like I don't know.
Nah,
I'm not great.
It's okay. Look, you can disagree. That's fine. I just love honest conversations with people who are interested in what we have to say.
They make a lot of sense, and I get why you would think them. I do disagree on a couple things, but I don't really have the knowledge or like sources to back them up. But your explanation does totally make sense on like what you're saying.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. You can think of us as like, how there are bug hunters for software code that get some of them get paid and some of them don't. Yeah. Well, we're like that for the globe. We find all these things. I mean, we got like thousands and thousands of 0-day exploits for the globe that nobody's heard yet.
Yeah, it was a great talk. It's good talk.
All right, cool, man.
Yeah, have a great day.
All right, see ya.
Another pleasant conversation.
Yeah, I love it that they go like that when they do. We're not assholes, folks. We will match your energy. If you come in want to have an honest conversation with us, please. This is what we live for. We like those kinds of interactions. We want them. We're not here to like beat people over the head and ridicule and mock. But when people come in and start with the swagger off the bat and start insulting us and calling us retards, it's probably not going to end well. You're not going to get that kind of discussion.
And you get way farther with an honest conversation, and you learn a whole lot more than when someone just basically just trying to insult you or assault your intelligence or something.